There seems to be a new team in the mix for Carlos Correa, the New York Mets.
Excuse me?
Okay, here we go. So I did a video earlier. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it up here somewhere. But I talked about Carlos Correa and how a couple of teams had the inside track, according to my good buddy Jim Bowden. He was saying that the Cubs and the Twins have the inside track on him, but there's been reports all over the place with Carlos Correa. Steve Phillips just yesterday was saying that the Giants and the Twins were the favorites. So I don't know, there's conflicting reports right there. And also that John Heyman had made a connection with the Yankees and Carlos Correa as well. Now, remember, there was a story not too long ago that the Yankees, even though they were in on Carlos Rodon, that they were working on something big, and a lot of people were speculating that maybe that could be Carlos Correa. But now, a shocker of a team has entered, and that is the New York Mets. I mean, I guess, is it really all that shocking considering what the Mets are doing? They're just throwing money all over the place. Their payroll is through the roof in a place we have never seen before. But I actually don't think it's as crazy as it might sound, not just because of the fact that they're wanting to spend money, but I'll talk about it here in just a second. So here's the story. This was according to Ken Rosenthal. The Mets are showing interest in star free agent Carlos Correa. Also, Dan Hayes and Andy McCullough got in on this article as well. Here's the story. Cohen's Mets are showing interest in Correa, according to sources familiar with the team's thinking. Correa, 28 years old, likely would play third base for the Mets, obviously because you have Francisco Lindor as your shortstop. One Mets person said, "I'd say there's some smoke. I'm not sure how big the fire is." Billy Epler declined comment. Now, again, I don't think this is as crazy as it might sound. If we go take a look at the Mets currently, right now you have Eduardo Escobar at third base. You signed him last offseason. But if we go take a look here at the Mets, when it came to third base production last year on Fangraphs, they were 22nd overall. Defensively, they were in the negatives. Offensively, they were barely in the positives. They definitely could use a boost at third base. You do have a guy like Mark Vientos down in the farm system, but if you have a chance to land someone here like Carlos Correa, oh my, this could be just game-changing. Last year had a very good season for the Twins. Hit 291, a 366 on base, a 467 slugging, a 140 WRC plus, 22 homers, a 4.4 Fangraph WAR. Now, according to this report, he would play third base. If we take a look at his career, he has never played third base in the major leagues. He has played short, but one example comes to mind perfectly. I saw it firsthand. Alex Rodriguez going to the Yankees. Derek Jeter was their shortstop. But now there wouldn't really be a debate. A lot of people thought A-Rod should have been the shortstop, and according to the numbers, he probably would have been the better shortstop defensively, but Jeter was Jeter. He was the captain of the Yankees, so A-Rod moved over to third. Now, in this case, Francisco Lindor is a very good defensive shortstop, and then Correa would slide over to third, and Correa has shown very good defense at shortstop in the past. 2021, he had 20 defensive runs saved, a 2.9 UZR. He didn't nearly rack up as many defensive runs saved this past year, but in his career, since 2015, he has 70 defensive runs saved. He is a very good shortstop, one of the best shortstops in the game. If you would have Francisco Lindor and Carlos Correa on the left side of that infield, that would be absolutely insane. The Mets, to me, make a lot of sense in two ways. And one, obviously, is the money. Carlos Correa, I think, at the end of the day, he is going to go where he is going to get the best offer. And he wants to win as well. I think more it comes down to the years and the dollars for him, but I do think he wants to win. If you had, let's say like the Kansas City Royals come out of nowhere and be like, hey, we'll give you 10 years, 310 or 320. Now, obviously, his head would turn, but he'd be like, oh, the Kansas City Royals, I don't want to go there. They're not really in, competition right now. So, yes, the dollars and the years are going to be important, but I do think he wants to go to a team that is competitive. And the Mets, obviously, this team right now is looking very good. Even without the Grom, they've made a couple of great moves. Justin Verlander, Kadai Senga, Jose Quintana, lots of pitching so far. But I've said on my streams that the Mets need a bat. They need a bat. When you're taking a look here, Alonso and Lindor, obviously, he turned He turned it around last year. 2 years ago was not very good, but he had a good season last year offensively. Back to the Lindor that we know. Pete Alonso, big bopper in the middle of the order. Marte, he had some issues late in the season with injuries. You did bring Nimmo back. I forgot to mention that as well. So that was huge, bringing him back. And then you got McNeil, you got Kana, you do have Vogel back there. But I feel like you need one more impact bat. If you want to be like the top of the top, the cream of the crop, one more bat would be huge for this Mets team, and Correa would be massive, and obviously improving defense as well. But now let's dive into this. Obviously, when we're thinking of this, we know Carlos Correa, he's going to get himself a fat contract. Right now, the estimated payroll is at $336. The estimated luxury tax payroll is right at around $350 million. Carlos Correa, Fangraphs, they are projecting him to get 8 years, $256, so that would be $32 million per season. Honestly, I could see him landing. If Xander Bogaerts could get himself an 11-year deal, I would think Correa could get something like that too. I could easily see 10 years, 320, 330, something like that. Now, with the Mets, obviously, if you're adding over $30 million to this year's payroll, you're getting very close to $400 million. But here's why I don't think that actually sounds all that crazy. Because if you're looking at the payroll for, in the next 6 to 7 years, right? If you look up to 2029, you only have one guy that you're paying more than $30 million per season for, and that's Francisco Lindor. The next longest guy you have is Brandon Nimmo, but honestly, Brandon Nimmo, when you're looking at the money these days that's getting thrown around, Nimmo is making a very respectable salary compared to what these other guys are making. Scherzer and Verlander, they're only going to be on the books for a couple of seasons, maybe 3 more seasons. You got a lot of money coming off the books. Yes, short term, yes, they're going to be paying a boatload of money to these players. But long term, they don't have a lot of contracts locked up. Carlos Correa, I think a lot of people would agree, would be a good long-term investment. And I think Steve Cohen sees a very good opportunity for a long-term investment. Obviously, you have Lindor, then you have Correa as well. Both these guys from Puerto Rico, very good friends. Man, this would be an awesome pairing on the left side of the infield. And again, I don't think it's all that crazy. Yes, you have a lot of money tied up for 2023 as well as 2024. You're going to have massive payrolls, but you're going to have tons of money coming off the books. I think right now the Mets, they're making smart plays. They're paying high AAVs for short-term success, but they don't have a lot of money locked up long-term, and that's good for them because obviously you're going to have key players long term, but it's going to give them time to build up that farm system because you're adding these players like Scherzer and Verlander, because they're going to give you short-term success, but you're able to build up the prospects at the same time. You're not really getting just stuck to these long-term deals. I think this actually makes a lot of sense. I have not personally considered the Mets as an option because I just haven't seen them connected, but if they are really in on this, I definitely see a fit. Absolutely. If he is willing to play third, absolutely. Now, what will, someone like the Minnesota Twins have to say? The Twins have never given out a big contract like that. The biggest contract they've given out is like Joe Mauer. I believe it was for $184 over 8 years, if I'm correct. That's the biggest contract in their franchise. So obviously they would blow through that. Will they be able to outbid the Mets? I don't know. If I'm looking at, if I'm Carlos Correa and I'm looking at the New York Mets and I'm looking at the Minnesota Twins, I mean, come on. Unless he really liked it in Minnesota, like he really enjoyed his time this past year, then sure, yeah, I could see him going back. But if you're kind of looking at, these two organizations, like where they're at right now, the Mets are obviously very much closer to a World Series championship. Could the Yankees jump in? But the Yankees, we've seen how they've been spending. Sure, yes, Aaron Judge, Garrett Cole. Yeah, these are, guys, you had to bring Judge back. Cole, that was a guy they needed to bring in. But will they do it for someone like Carlos Correa when you have someone like an Anthony Volpe in your system? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do that. We'll just have to wait and see if the Yankees can get on it. And the Cubs are interesting, but we've seen the Cubs in the past where they don't want to be, supposedly according to reports, they don't want to be, giving out these long-term deals. So I don't know. Right now, if the Mets are serious about this, I mean, they got to have the inside track, I would think. I don't know. Like, then there's the Giants as well. I didn't mention the Giants. But the Giants have always had a tough time landing guys, to go out to the West Coast unless they've already, grown up on the West Coast or they've been on the West Coast. So I think they would have a bit of trouble landing him unless they just offered him a deal that he couldn't refuse. But I don't know if the Giants would end up doing that. This is really interesting. All of a sudden, a team that not a lot of people have really thought about with Carlos Correa, all of a sudden might be the number one best option. And I think it actually makes more sense than it might seem. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. This could end up turning into a huge thing here. Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.